Hello and welcome back to All for United WFC. The WSL is back finally, and we get to see some Manchester United women action. We've seen this in the Champions League over the last few days, but nothing can beat the WSL, can it? Leicester City is the opener this weekend. Did you see I've got Zoe with me again to talk through everything to do with Leicester City, what to expect, the transfer window, manager situations. Actually, a lot more to talk about than a normal preview, I guess, when we're looking at, opposing teams that United might come up against throughout the season. But firstly, Zoe, how are you doing? It feels like it's been a busy old week with deadline day, and the WSL's back this weekend. The WSL 2 is back as well. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a mental week. Deadline day, the window shut at an 11 o'clock. I feel like they should probably take it out of the men's book and shut it at 7 p.m. because it was a late night. Yeah, crazy, but also buzzing for it to be back.
No, absolutely, and I think for people like I guess myself and yourself as well, reporting on Leicester City women as you do, and myself with United, as you said, if transfers get close to deadline, it can be one hell of a late night as things go on and on. As some of them not even announced on the day, some of them go to the next day as well. Which causes a bit of confusion, all kind of thing. So we'll start there into the transfer window. If you just want to, if you can summarise Leicester City's transfer window, what's been good, what's maybe not been so good, and just the overall summer, I guess, from a Leicester City point of view.
Yeah, there's been a lot going on. It's been a bit of a whirlwind. They announced sort of mid-July their retains list and who they were letting go, who had come to the end of the contract and who wouldn't be offered new contracts. That was a fairly hefty list, I can't lie, and there was a lot of key players on there. So we saw the likes of Sophie Howard depart, which I think if you ask any Leicester City women's fan, that will be the name that they bring up. She'd been at the club for 5 years. She was a firm fan favourite. Was in the starting 11 pretty much every week in the Women's Super League and in the cup games, a real consistent member of the team, captained the side on various occasions, and she didn't get a new contract at the time. We didn't know why. So that's a key name. We've seen the likes of Yuka Maminki, again, a star player last season, probably one of their best players in the team. She obviously went to Everton, and then in the last few days, we've also seen Ruby Mace go to Everton. So there's been some quite big blows, and then also the likes of Courtney Nevin, CJ Bott, Lena Peterman, again, some more fan favourites and consistent names. Not so much Lena Peterman last season because she was obviously injured, but Courtney Nevin, CJ Bott, consistent names in those starting 11s. So I think there was some few surprises on there. However, they did manage to keep hold of the likes of Janina Leitzig, which I think for me is a key one to tie down the goalkeeper. I personally think she's one of the best goalkeepers in the league. So to tie that down, I think was huge. I probably expected her to go. Yanis Kaiman, obviously club captain, again, another really key one to tie down. And then also players such as Missy Goodwin, Hannah Kane, Shannon O'Brien, those exciting, a bit younger but talented players. It was really good to see them tie down and the club give them new contracts. And then obviously we've come into the transfer window, and it was a little bit slow to start off with. They made 4 deadline day signings. Before that, they made 3 signings. If you look at all 7 signings, they've gone very defensive in terms of the players that they've brought in, which I think really they needed to. They lost some really key defensive players. I think it probably would have been nice to see a few more attacking players come in. And really, I think the key thing is their squad depth. They don't really have... I'm concerned about their squad depth, to be honest. I think they've got a decent starting 11. However, I think when you look at who's going to be named on the bench, I think potentially they could have done with a few more players. Before Amadee Macau left in pre-season, that was what she kept saying to me, was I just need to add numbers. And I think they probably could have done with a few more, which I think is probably why they'll struggle this season.
It's interesting you mentioned depth. I think obviously from a different, I guess, in terms of level or expectation, but from a United point of view, that's literally what United fans have been saying this past week as well, that the depth maybe isn't there from a United point of view as well. When you're looking at the players that United have brought in, for example, it's been very good, but United have only got 1 right back, really, in Jade Riviere, 3 centre-backs. So when you're fighting in 4 competitions, that's not going to be great either. So certainly from a United point of view, defensively, I guess, short as well. But I guess from Leicester, obviously, Ruby Mace, I think, took the headlines a little bit, obviously, with the reported fee as well. And again, just, I guess, a big name, particularly when it's between a transfer that's in the same league as well. So, as you mentioned, moving to Everton's there as well. I worry for Leicester, if I'm being totally honest. I don't think they've had the window, or it's not been as strong as I thought it was going to be. As you mentioned, 4 deadline day signings, obviously see how that plays out. But I think January is going to be an interesting window for both teams, but particularly for Leicester, seeing where the table is at that point. I think just looking at the table last season, I think we actually said this on the show that we did last season when we were previewing United Leicester at the time. Leicester were one of the lowest scoring teams last season. I think it was only 21 goals, which, looking at the table, was only one more than Crystal Palace. And compared to the other teams around them, West Ham 36, Tottenham 26, and so on. So it's less than teams around. Where do you think the goals are going to come from a Leicester point of view this season? In terms of, you mentioned Leipzig, which I agree, by the way. I think she is one of the best keepers in the league, and when you said that name, I was like, really? She's still at Leicester. This is a keeper I wanted at United a couple of years ago as well. So from a defensive point of view, there's obviously, you mentioned the signings are more defensively minded, but where do you think the goals are going to come from, and I guess cause United issues if there's going to be an attacking output?
I think a lot of people have asked me sort of my one to watch this season for Leicester, and I think it's Noémie Mouchon. She was signed last season by Amandine Mikel from over in France. She really, really impressed in pre-season. Everyone you spoke to around the club and players within the squad spoke about how highly rated she was in pre-season for them last season. They went on a pre-season tour out in Australia, and she really, really impressed. And I think everyone was so excited to watch her play last season. She then goes and does her ACL, and that is sort of where Leicester City women's problems started last season. They had an unprecedented injury crisis. I have genuinely never seen an injury crisis like it. It was crazy, and essentially the reason why they didn't get the goals last season and why they struggled. So to get her back, she's fit. I've watched her in pre-season training. She's available this weekend for the Manchester United game. I am excited personally to see her in that number 9 role and see what she can do. She's impressed me when I've watched her so far in pre-season. And I think for me, she's going to be a big, big player in this team. We've also got Jutta Rantala back. She got injured in October last season. The season before, she was their top goal scorer. They really, really missed her. This is a team that played 90% of last season without a number 9. They were playing everyone out of position. Ruby Mace went up top against Aston Villa in the league last season. Yanis Kaiman, who natural position really is right back, played up top. They were trying everyone. So I think to get that number 9 back, Jutta Rantala on her day is outstanding. And I think Noémie Mouchon is really going to be one to watch in this league, and hopefully will impress and give them that consistent number 9 and also a consistent goal scoring source.
I think as well, I forgot she got injured, Rantala. You mentioned her there because she got a couple of goals early on, and I thought, I've completely forgot about the injury, to be honest, until you mentioned it there. Now I do remember the kind of lineups that when you were seeing the Leicester lineups, hang on a minute, who's the striker? Who's playing where on this one? You kind of answered the question there, and I kind of phrased the question slightly wrong on that last one. In terms of key players for Leicester going into this game in particular, but just, I guess, for the season as well, who you're kind of looking out for. Whether I know I just asked the question from an attacking point of view, but is there anyone else that's going to be, I guess, if Leicester are going to get a result on Sunday, who's going to be the kind of standout or key player, do you think?
I think they're going to have to look to those players that can pull them out of situations, and when it's getting hard can pull them out. And that for me is always players like Sam Tierney. She is someone that has been at the club for a long time. She knows exactly what it means to play for Leicester. And I think last season, when they really just needed to grind out results, whether it wasn't going to be pretty, it wasn't going to be the best football, but they just had to get 3 points or get a point. You're going to be looking to her. I'm excited to see the likes of Julie Thibault back in that defence. I think the sort of run of games, the last 3-4 games at the end of last season, we really started to see what this squad can do. And they started to pick up they got 3 home wins on the bounce. And you saw, as they got players back that had been out injured, you started to see how this team might play. However, obviously now we're having a change in manager. So you don't know what the setup's going to be. You don't really know what sort of starting 11 the new manager's going to go with. So it's sort of hard to predict that now, because if we still had Amandine Mikel here, I could sort of probably predict how she was going to go for the game on Sunday. We know the way that she likes to play. She'd started to implement her style. And like I say, when she started to get players back in the last few months of last season, we've really started to see an identity around the club. But Amadee Mikel isn't here anymore, and they don't have a permanent manager in charge. So it's quite hard to predict.
Just very quickly on that, I want to come back to a couple of other points you raised there, but you speak about the manager, and I think I remember, again, from the chat that we had last season as well, you spoke very highly of the manager there as well. And I think this game was a bit of a shock to everyone. Firstly, obviously, that Matt Beard's story came out about Burnley, and that kind of shocked everyone. Then I guess more details came out about Leicester, and then I guess the managerial change there as well. What have you made of everything that's kind of gone on around this whole situation? As you said, so close to the start of a WSL season, still no permanent manager. It's kind of a little bit up in the air. What I guess two-part question, really. What are your thoughts on it for a start? But then also, where do you see this going in the next kind of couple of weeks, months or so?
Well, yeah, it's been a whirlwind. I think in football, I think that the time, once the season has ended, that is when you would expect clubs to be having those conversations around whether the manager that is currently in charge is going to be the one to take them forward. You would expect, and it would be fair to assume, that those conversations would happen at the end of a season. So whether those conversations happened or not, I don't know. But they've gone away for the summer. The staff and players have gone away. They've come back. They've had nearly a full pre-season. When Amadee Mikel left, they only had one more pre-season game. They played 4 or 5 games. Nearly a full transfer window where they'd signed players under Amadee Mikel. And then 10 days before their opening game in the Women's Super League, they decide that Amadee Mikel is not the woman to take them forward. Now, what's changed in that time is they've had a new director of women's football come in, Lee Billiard, formerly in the same role at Aston Villa. So he has come in, and what we know is that he has conducted somewhat of a review, and he has come to the conclusion that Amadee Mikel is not who they want to take them forward. And from what we understand is that they wanted to do it at the time that they did in order to give whoever was going to come in to the club the chance to bring in players before the transfer window closes. Obviously, that it still didn't allow them a lot of time. They had a week, and the transfer window's closed, and we've not seen a permanent manager come in. So it's a little bit confusing. The timing obviously threw everyone off, because I don't think anyone ever wants to go into a new season without a permanent manager in charge. It's not an ideal situation. You don't want that instability at the club. So it's not ideal. They've obviously named Rick Passmore as their interim boss. I spoke to him on Thursday in the press conference, and he doesn't really have a timeline on how long he's going to be in that role. We know he's going to be in the dugout on Sunday, but how many games he's in the dugout for, we don't know. We don't really have a timeline. Obviously, Matt Beard is the one rumoured to take over the job. He's on gardening leave for 3 months, technically, from Burnley. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, but I think it's really key for Leicester that they get a permanent manager in as quickly as possible.
I think as well, because I don't know whether this is just me and my mind going blank, but I don't remember ever a team going into a season without a manager sorted. Sometimes it can happen after 1 or 2 games. I remember situations like that, but I don't think I've ever, or maybe I'm just being thick or something, I don't remember a situation where a team has gone into a season so soon before a season with a managerial change. And obviously Burnley in a similar situation as well, in terms of what's happened there. So I think the whole thing is just it's bizarre to me that Leicester are in this situation. So I don't actually think Leicester was, you mentioned the injuries like last season, don't get me wrong, were Leicester an exciting watch at all times? I don't think so. But had a lot of injuries and stayed up as well.
I said so much last season that for me, Amadee Mikel was brought in for a project. There was a project there, and you could see that. She spoke so much about that, and the fans really bought into that. And because of the amount of injuries that they had, I said at the end of last season, the 25-26 season is actually sort of, to me, was year 1 of that project, because she couldn't really implement what she wanted to at the club. So it felt like an exciting time that this was going to be year 1 of the project, and she was really going to be able to kick on, have a summer transfer window, and get those players back that were injured. So I suppose for football clubs, it's all about assessing the risk, and Lee Billiard, the director of women's football, has come in, and he has clearly thought that it's too risky to stick with her, However, it's also risky to go into a new season without a permanent manager. So either way, there's an element of risk. They've decided to go with someone new. And I suppose only time will tell whether that was the right decision.
Certainly going to be an interesting team to keep an eye on. I think, we'll come to, I guess, predictions and all kinds of things, in just a second. But I think from my point of view, I think United have got a good first fixture. I think without saying that with any disrespect to Leicester, I think this is probably the best time to play a team like that. As you said, going through a bit of a transition, don't really know what to expect. All that could work in Leicester's favour in terms of not knowing what to expect from a United point of view. And I think just talking on that from a United point of view for a second, I think the one thing that worries me a little bit, you mentioned the injuries for Leicester, is the injuries for United. Mark Skinner in the press conference this morning spoke about the players that are out. None of them, it sounds like, are going to be back. So that's Freely in a role for Rachel Williams, Leah Galton, Simi Awujo and Gabby George. It sounds like they're all out for this weekend as well. So that bench is probably going to look pretty similar to the team that we saw in Hammarby, in Sweden, but against Hammarby and against PSV, where it was 2 goalkeepers, 1 centre-back, 1 centre midfielder, and then a couple of the youngsters who haven't played yet from that point of view. So that does worry me a tad. I think the 11 is strong enough, but certainly if the game goes on, we don't have match winners anymore. It seems within the squad to come off the bench, unless he's going to start looking at some of the youngsters and start putting them on to make an impact in the game. So that would be the one concern I've got from a United point of view going into this. I'll give my prediction in a second, but I'm still confident enough. But yeah, that does worry me a little bit in terms of the potential injuries and the fact that we're a little bit, I guess, short of numbers ourselves going into this one. But I'll ask you a kind of similar question in terms of, if you're looking at this United side, where do you think the threat is coming from? I can't actually remember. This is really bad of it. I can't remember what the last score was at the last meeting. Was it 2-0? I want to say it was. Sorry, I've muted you 2 seconds. There you go.
Yeah, 2-0. I think both times that we played United last season, they frustrated the team because defensively, I think you were very solid. I think there was a point last season where Leicester and Man United actually had the best defences in the league.
Yes, because I remember you saying that on the show.
Yeah, obviously Manchester United came out on top. But I think if they're as strong this season as they were last season defensively, again, I think you can very easily frustrate teams, and teams like Leicester don't really have the quality to find a way through that.
I think I was just double checking. So the last 5 have actually been the last 4 have been close scorelines. United's record is 7 wins, 1 draw in the WSL. 2-0, 2-0, 1-0 to United, and a 1-1 draw in there as well, and then a 5-1 just before that as well in the last 5 fixtures. So the last couple have been pretty close in terms of scoreline wise. So I think, again, I think most United fans are going into this expecting a big scoreline, particularly what we saw in Sweden. It was promising, a couple of the players there as well. But yeah, recent meetings would suggest it's not going to be as high scoring as maybe other people think. But as we said, both kind of unknown. I don't really know what to expect from United this season, if being totally honest. It feels like the Hammarby game wasn't that long ago, but it feels like it's been months, because this Grace Clinton and Jess Parks saga, I'm going to call it, seemed to take the life out of everyone for the last 48 hours. And it'd be good to talk about the football. Well, we are talking about the football again. It'd be good to actually watch the football again rather than talking about transfers and contracts and all of that kind of stuff.
For sure.
Side of it. What do you think is a good season then, from a Leicester point of view? Obviously, in the 3 competitions, where would you kind of say is a success now? You mentioned that this would have been, I guess, year 1 in your eyes for Aberdeen, I guess, in that project. But now, looking at the Leicester City side and where you're at, where would you say what would you deem as a successful season overall?
I think, being brutally honest, not finishing bottom of the league table. I think it feels harsh, but you look and you think, is there a team worse than them? I think teams you look at the likes of Everton, who were sort of down there with Leicester. They obviously finished higher up. They had a good end of the season, but they were sort of down there with Leicester, struggled to pick up results. And you look, I mean, they've arguably, Everton took Leicester's 2 best players last season in Yuka Minky and Ruby Mace. So that for me is concerning. I think, yes, Naomi Mucho and Just Rantala, if they can stay fit, I think 2 very good goal scoring sources. And if they can stabilise that back line, you can bring back that defence. However, I think they're going to struggle, and I think if they can finish above, finishing bottom, I think that for me would probably be a success.
Yeah, and I think I would agree. Looking at it from the outside, and I think it's because I do have. If I was putting predictions out there, I do think Leicester will probably finish bottom. I don't think they're actually going to go down because obviously we were talking about this before we started recording. Obviously, the way the relegation works this year is you play the bottom team plays 3rd place in the WSL 2. So I don't actually think Leicester will go down, but I do think they'll finish bottom in that respect. So I just think the other 2 you mentioned, Everton, they're taking 2 of Leicester's best players. I don't expect them to be kind of near the. I think they'll be bottom half, but I don't think they're going to be kind of near the bottom. It's kind of really, for me, between Leicester and West Ham for the bottom 2, I guess, spots on that one. Before we quickly come to predictions, I'm going to flip the question. What do you think is? I'm intrigued from an outsider's point of view. What do you think is a success for United this season in terms of where do you see this United side going? Because again, Mark Skinner's obviously, I think he is normally serving WSL manager now, so we kind of know. I never thought I'd be saying that. I can't lie. But we kind of know what we're going to get from United this season. There's a couple of new players in there as well, potentially Champions League for the first time in terms of the full league phase as it is this season. But what would you say is a success for United, and where do you put this United side in comparison to the others at the moment?
I think you've got to take top 3 as a success, really. I mean, I'm interested to see, because to be honest, I'm interested to see how Arsenal get on, because I think Arsenal this season are going to domestically really go for it. You know, they've done the Champions League, and I think they're going to go for that WSL. Obviously, in their way, it's Chelsea, but I think if you're a Man United fan, top 3 when you look at competing with the likes of Chelsea and Arsenal, they to me just feel worlds apart from the rest of the teams in the league. I think they pull away, certainly this season. But then I look, I mean, people have been asking me for sort of my top 6. And I think how do you predict the likes of London City Lionesses? Because you look at the money that you've spent, and I think I was looking at their fans, and they were saying, well, if we don't finish top 6, that's not successful. And that's the team that's just got promoted. And I think this is just going to be one of the most competitive Women's Super League seasons we've probably ever seen. I think it's going to be so unpredictable. I think Spurs will struggle, but then again, pick up a few results and suddenly you're mid-table. But I think from a United perspective, I think you've got if you get in top 3, that's a success.
I'll take that for now.
Yeah.
We'll see where we are when the reverse fixture comes around as to where the 2 teams sit, and we'll revisit that from that point of view. But yeah, I don't know with London City, you know. I really don't know. Like, I kind of made a joke to somebody, but it's kind of half not a joke. I can see them either finishing 5th or 12th. Like,
yeah.
I really, it depends how quick that squad of players are going to gel together, because it's all very well and good buying everybody. That doesn't always work. And that can, you cannot work together and whatever else. So, yeah, I'm intrigued by them this season. Obviously, tough opener for them as well.
Yeah,
against Arsenal. So, kind of see where they're at there. Right, we'll come to score predictions then. What do you reckon on Sunday? United have got a pretty good record, as I said, only 1-7, drawn 1 in the WSL meetings. United have won 4, or the last 4, I should say, opening WSL games as well. So. It's looking, the stats are saying in United's favour. What do you reckon on this one?
The optimist in me is thinking sometimes these games when everything is so stacked against one team, like there's no one that is going to be watching that game that is going to be thinking Leicester are going to win. The odds are so in Man United's favour that sometimes in these games, something special, let's call it, can happen. And I wouldn't be surprised if somehow Leicester got something out of this, whether it was a 0-0, whether they just sat back, low block, and got the 0-0. It wouldn't surprise me because of how unstable and how turbulent the last week has been or so. But also on the same hand, I think you're probably looking at a Man United 2-0, 3-0 win. But then it's one of those games where like any result, I'm trying to pick an answer, but everything is just sort of swinging each way, and any result wouldn't surprise me.
I think it would surprise me. If United don't win, I will be surprised. Put it that way. And I think United have got. I think if United don't win this one, I dread to think of the fan base is already a little bit frustrated with the transfer window as it is. I think if United get off to a slow start in the WSL, and they can't really afford to, because United's opening 5. You're looking at London City, Lioness away, as we just said. Don't really know what to expect from them. Arsenal and Chelsea in the first 5. So kind of need to get off to a good start, really, because otherwise I think it's going to set us off. And I don't just mean a good start by getting a win. If United scrape through a 1-0, I don't think that's going to appease many fans either. I think this has got to be a convincing performance overall on that one, which I do think it will. But if I'm putting a score, I think it'll probably be 3-0, to be honest. I don't see Leicester. I don't think United will absolutely batter Leicester or anything else. Equally, I don't see how Leicester are going to score, particularly against the United defence was pretty solid last season. Obviously, Fallon in goal as well. I just don't see it personally. But, to be honest, anyone who listens to my predictions these days, I'm always wrong. So it won't be 3-0. But we shall see. Right, we'll wrap it up there. Slightly shorter kind of previews. We kind of want to do this season because we do long live shows as it is, so we're trying to keep the previews a little bit shorter this season. But so, where can people find the work that you do and all of those kinds of things?
Yeah, we've just launched a brand new women's sports show on BBC Radio Leicester. So every Tuesday, 6 till 7, the women's sports show. We cover, obviously, Leicester City women, so all reaction from all their games and any Leicestershire sport, if that's what you're interested in. All our post-match reaction from every Leicester City women's game is over on the When You're Smiling podcast, which is available on BBC Sound. So manager, player, you can hear from them all, and analysis straight after the game over there.
That's a really good name for a podcast.
So When You're Smiling is the song that Leicester City play before they walk out.
See, I didn't know that.
There you go.
Every day. That actually makes a lot more sense now. I thought that was just a name you'd come up with. And I thought that was quite good. Maybe not. So make sure you're following all that. I'll leave links in the description as always to check all that stuff out. All of our socials are all for United WFC. So if you're new around here, make sure you're liking this video and subscribing if you haven't already. Enjoy the game if you're going on Sunday, and we're just glad, aren't we, that the WSL is back and women's football is back, and we can start talking about that rather than all of the ins and outs of a transfer window and everything else. So have a good weekend all, and we shall see you guys in the next one.